Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for August 8th. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and I'm here today to update you on everything that happened yesterday on the Big Brother 26 live feeds. It was day 23 in the house, and we got close. We got close, but it was a bit of a vote flip, bit of a flipped vote last night. Hard to say it's like a fully flipped vote, given that it was never really solidified, but we'll talk about it. Stuff to talk about. You must be updated as it is pretty relevant to tonight's eviction. And with me to talk about it is Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I have been better. I have certainly been better than the possible day of the eviction of one Tucker. But like you said, we got to get through it. We'll talk about it. And like the number one thing that anybody who's out here, rooting for Tucker, or at least, enjoying his presence on the show will agree upon. He did this to himself. There's nothing else that we can say. That's the only source of comfort in all of this, if any at all. So we'll get through it.
Yes. Well, let's talk it through. If you're watching along, here is the graphic. Of course, Cedric the HOH. We don't need to go through the whole thing because, quite frankly, there's a lot of it. You've seen the episodes by now. Left on the block on Cedric's HOH is Kenny and Tucker, despite the fact that Tucker won the veto. America will be deciding who goes up on the block tonight in the eviction episode. And by that, I mean Quinn is going on the block tonight. Eviction episode. So with Quinn going up on the block, joining them on the block, the question is, well, A, who wins the AI arena competition, as that will still potentially decide who gets evicted. But then B, who gets evicted between the two that remain on the block after the AI arena competition. And once we run through the events of the day, you'll have a pretty decent understanding of where we likely stand tonight for the eviction. So
Yeah,
let's talk about it.
these
Yeah.
past couple of days have been strange, obviously, of not knowing how the dynamic, like these couple of weeks have been the same as far as getting to Thursday. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, AI arena, all of that. But this week, especially because we don't even know who the third nom is, it's very interesting now to have this 24-hour perspective of being pretty sure, like with almost like a 99% certainty that we know it's going to be Quinn. And, the discussions in the house almost feel like they were kind of tapering off of who's possibly going to go up, maybe just because it's getting closer and the anxiety is kind of melting away a little bit for the Josephs and whoever's of the world. Like the morning they're freaking out, by the nighttime it's just kind of like discussions about who's getting voted out regardless of who goes up on the block. So again, these weeks have been weird, but this week especially.
Yeah, so we started the day really with Tico and Chemo. They were talking about Tucker. As we know, Chemo, a little bit of a crush on Tucker. T-Core, though, not the biggest fan. She does not like how he spoke to Cedric or how he conducts himself in the house through intimidation. And so there's a little bit of a disconnect between the two of them, but there is one thing that they can both agree on, which is that they don't like Rubina and Tucker together. The night before, it was kind of awkward. Rubina kind of left the group to go hang out with Tucker alone. And they both really like Rubina. They hang out with Rubina a lot, but it's getting a little awkward, especially if they end up in a room with the two of them together. It's just a little weird.
Yeah, Rubina's been somebody throughout this whole season so far that's not been locked in with any, core group. She's obviously had some people that feel good with her and whatnot. But this house has been since day one, since the Matt of it all, Matt and MJ possibilities has been, if there's a showmance, we got to get that squashed before it could go any farther. Which is so funny because this is the most Love Island season of Big Brother that we've had, and as soon as like something actually starts to look like it could be a legitimate showmance or anything beyond just like I have a crush on so and so, they want to squash it. And the course of the day is obviously going to play out in an even more intense way with this storyline than we ever could have predicted, I would say.
Yeah. Yes. Well, so that's kind of the seeds of things happening there in the morning. Um, Throughout the day, throughout the afternoon, there's like I think a dynamic that I want to try to make clear because I think it's developing and solidifying in this particular direction. But obviously, we've talked a lot about Brooklyn and Chelsea and how they have been kind of put into the center of the house now. I think that they basically they have the Pentagon, they have the collective, and then they have some of the best relationships with people like MJ and Leah. And then they can kind of pretty effortlessly move throughout all of those things. And then even the visionaries often look toward Brooklyn and Chelsea as people that they could potentially work with. Specifically, though, with MJ and Leah. Last week when Chelsea was HOH, like MJ and Leah were up in that HOH room a lot. They were bonding a lot. They talked a lot about bringing the women together and maybe making a women's alliance of some kind of, to some kind of degree. Um, and so that sort of feeling has continued. MJ is giving Chelsea a lot of information. So in particular, MJ and Chelsea are really bonded, or at least in one direction. It's
At least for MJ.
yeah, it's almost like MJ has a crush, an unrequited crush on Chelsea. If
Sure.
if we're going by the language of the rest of the house,
Yeah.
because MJ thinks that Chelsea's like locked in, one of her closest allies, and Chelsea is like, yeah, I deal with her. Um, so on the other side of things, Brooklyn has bonded more with Leah, and they have gotten a little bit closer. And so it's almost as though they're now like tag teaming, like separating themselves. Like Chelsea's working on MJ, Brooklyn's working on Leah, and so we have a conversation between the two of them where they're talking to each other, and Brooklyn's like, "Hey, we need numbers, we need people. What do we do?" And Leah's like, "Well, we should pull in Chelsea, obviously." And Brooklyn suggests, "Well, also maybe like Quinn and Cam." And Leah's like, "I guess." And she's like, "I guess to Cam." She's like, "Yeah, I don't know. He just lied to me a few times, but like, yeah, I guess." Um, Leah is worried about Tucker. She's worried that Tucker's gonna put her on the block. And so, there is still, Leah became very anti-Quinn, obviously, after the, conversation with Cam, and she came to this conclusion that Quinn was really, like, playing her and, making her, uh, hate, Cedric with the comment and all of that stuff. Um, However, in the last day or so, she has cooled off a little bit about that, and is back to the worry that, like, Tucker is pretty anti her still. And again, very important to, like, keep this in mind. The Tucker Rubina stuff, I think, is a core part of all of what's happening throughout the day.
Yes, I mean, we just talked about the T core and chemo of it all, and their discussion of why they don't love Rubina slipping away. Leah has been somebody who's been very vocal in the past couple of weeks about her crush on Tucker. Crush, obviously not going both ways there, where Tucker has obviously had eyes for Rubina, and Leah's going to make some comments a couple times throughout the day that are just not like anti Rubina, but just like, huh, isn't Rubina like so loud and annoying? And it's like, where did this come from, Leah? Well, all of a sudden you feel this way about Rubina. But there's that. I mean, the MJ and Leah of it all has been interesting as well to track as we go forward in the game here, figuring out where the two of them are going to fall. And it seems like they are most likely going to end up following the lead of Brooklyn and Chelsea, who are obviously two of the strongest players in this house. But watching them like stumble through the game, MJ just lost her power, so it's not even like she has that guaranteed safety next week. But like just looking all around them, around both of them in their orbits, it's like they're not even like checking in with each other very often, as if they are. I mean, they're not as close as they may have been perceived, or maybe they thought that they would be throughout the season. They came together for the mat of it all, and then as that has been put in the rearview mirror, it's just like again, as you were describing, like both of them have kind of jumped into the boats of the separately Chelsea and Brooklyn, but like they're not checking in with each other. Even at the end of the day, when both of them are talking about how they are confused about where this week's vote's going to go because really nobody else talks to them about strategy stuff. They have barely even checked in with each other about it because they don't know what else they don't know what to share with each other. They don't have information. Nobody's telling them anything concrete or real for them to feel confident in, kind of making what they have solidified enough to then, try to bring other people in. They're still very much in kind of like a self-preservation mode of jumping into other people's things wherever they can find an in, and there haven't been many ins for them.
Hmm. Yeah, they have very much separated, and we'll actually get into a little bit more of that later in the day. And so, uh, in particular, though, Leah potentially not being a vote for Tucker is definitely like a big domino to fall here. Because in the event that, say, Quinn is up on the block against Tucker, Leah is one of the votes that Tucker would need for sure in order to stay. And so the fact that she is kind of like, yeah, Tucker can maybe go in this conversation is not great. She says, listen, he should have used the veto on himself.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I'm sorry.
yeah. Well, they
we're,
both
we're
they both just very much agree, whoever gets nominated by America, they both don't plan to vote for that person.
Yeah, we're going to get into it as we start to talk about the direction that the votes are shifting, especially, again, obviously against Tucker here. But when you try to like put together the math of the other votes that would possibly save Tucker, you can get the numbers on one hand. Maybe you need the sixth finger to see who would want Tucker to stay. But there is just looking like no world where that is a group of people that would ever come together and say, hey, you want to vote for Tucker, right? You want to vote for Tucker, right? And ever get them in the same room or just to get the word passed along. They're all looking to other people that are in more of a powerful position that don't want Tucker to stay. And that's why, this is unlikely to work for him.
Yeah, we'll talk more, but at this point, if Tucker were to stay against Quinn, it would likely not be because there was an organized effort. It would be because it was like a chaotic mess of like people accidentally voting in a
Accidents, like
thing.
six
Yeah.
accidents in a row of just walking into the diary room saying, I don't think anyone else is going to vote for Tucker, but I want to.
Chelsea talks to the cameras. She often does. And she says that she's basically expecting Quinn to go up on the block. That is her prediction. It's not what she wants to happen, but it's what she thinks will happen because of the drama of it. So this is not this is not an opinion that is unique to Chelsea either. Quinn is expecting it. Many people in the house at this point are expecting Quinn to go up on the block, and to some degree are preparing for it. So this is not going to come as a surprise for most of the house guests.
No, I still think it may come as a surprise to Joseph because, again, with the amount of time he's talked about this, about who he thinks is going to go up, and again, I really feel like it's a lot of just anxiety within him, thinking that it could be him. He knows he hasn't been involved in a lot, and he feels like he has said one or two things that maybe like could paint him in a villainous light in what possibly could have been shown on the show. Not like bad things, just kind of like evil, twirling the mustache type, villain type vibes. Meanwhile, Quinn's the one in the diary room being like, I have all these schemes and plans, and everyone's wrapped around my finger, but he has no way to know that. So I think Joseph may be the only one last minute actually surprised when Quinn goes up there tonight.
Yeah. So Chelsea and Brooklyn talk. They compare some notes. They're checking in about sort of the status of the Pentagon. They do talk about Quinn and his power, and also the fact that he's been caught in some final twos. Um, which honestly, like, I wish people would be more specific because I don't know exactly which final twos which people know about. I think the main one is that Leah has basically told everyone about her Quinn final two. But I think that a couple people know about the Cedric final two, but I'm not sure how many yet. And then other than that, I'm like, which other final twos do they know about? I just want them to be more specific. It would be very helpful for me. But either way, they're like, it's not that big of a concern. They think that Quinn is still loyal to the Pentagon. They're wrong. But they're also kind of right. Like, Quinn isn't going to be betraying the Pentagon, I think, anytime soon. So they don't need to deal with him yet, but they should probably be a little more skeptical of him in general right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
they just locked in a couple days ago again, like reaffirming their loyalty to each other.
mhm. So, to them, Cam is the bigger concern. That his whole thing with Leah and just in general, he just seems like such a wild card. Which is funny because I think that Cam is like a very like chill person in general. But the whole Leah thing has people seeing him as such a volatile wild card.
Mhm.
And so he continues to be in that spot. I don't know how like for Cam if he's gonna be able to get out of this like perception of him. But right now it's still Cam. Cam
Well,
is the problem.
it's not helping his case when he's going around telling whoever will listen, I'm done with Leah, I'm done with Leah, I can't, she told this, she told that, I'm done with Leah. And then he's talking to her in the kitchen in front of everybody else, whether it's in a flirtatious matter or just talking. So you're saying one thing and immediately going in front of everybody and doing the other. I mean, I can understand why people are feeling like he's hard to predict. I mean, on just a small scale of that, it's like you don't have a lot else to work with the guy, of what he has going on in the house. But that's very obviously he's telling two stories. And then of course you're going to have, I don't know how much we're going to get into of all of this, but like the Chelsea feelings towards Cam, and not positive feelings. They started out as positive feelings, but
Oh boy.
Chelsea spent every day going to the camera in some
Yeah.
way or another, telling us and the cameras how she's annoyed with Cam being dirty and not cleaning up after himself with the food and this and that. She's just got a new thing every day. So his perception, in the house, as much as he is a steady, stable guy, various other things are kind of putting him down a little bit.
Yeah, in general, like hygiene is not something that I find super important to talk about in the update, but it is becoming quite a common thing to talk about because it's not even just Chelsea that's talked about it at this point. That apparently just like Cam does not have the best hygiene, and at least according to them, and Chelsea is very she really does not like his socks. And it's I don't know what it is with feet and people in this house. We had Lisa with her feet on the thing, and then now we've got Cam with his dirty socks. It's like I don't know what's going on, but it is an issue apparently.
Yeah, and I
Um,
guess it's making it easier on her to let go of that crush because again, she's finding something different every single day, that turns her off more from this man. So good for her.
Yeah. So Chelsea and Brooklyn, they talk also about MJ and Leah. And the fact that the two of them seem to be on separate pages. They're proposing different alliances. The alliance, I don't know if you noticed, when I was just talking about it, when Chelsea or when Brooklyn and Leah were talking about locking in a group, MJ was not included in that group. And so they're kind of like, okay, are we being played? Are they smart enough to pretend like they're not together and be pitching these separate groups, and they're dividing and conquering us? No, no, they're probably not.
Yeah, no. Brooklyn shuts that down immediately. She's like, "No, we're talking about Mackenzie here. Be real."
Yeah. Now, this conversation, they're up in the HOH room. There's a bunch of collective people that end up joining, and there's a large-ish collective conversation, where they're locking in the vote, basically. And Chemo is gonna be asking, like, "So what is the consensus?" They kind of all agree, like, whatever Cedric wants, we'll just do at this point. Now, again, I think there's a couple of key elements to this because up until now, it's been Cedric, Quinn, and, a little bit Joseph, who have been like, "Yeah, Tucker's gotta go." Cedric and Quinn, obviously, the most adamant about this because he's the one that has called both of them out at this point. On the other side of things, Brooklyn and Chelsea, who have a bit more power right now in the house and a bit more influence, have been much more, "I want Kenny to go." Brooklyn even called Kenny out. The reason being that Kenny has been talking about the women's alliance and specifically Brooklyn and all of this stuff. And so they've been pushing the Kenny angle, and everybody's been on board with the Kenny angle because even people like Chemo, he wants Tucker to stay. MJ wants Tucker to stay. Rubina wants Tucker to stay. And so like a bunch of people want Tucker to stay. So it's easy to push that Kenny angle And that's why it's been basically just Kenny all this time. However, I think two major things have happened in terms of why this has shifted a bit. One is what we've already talked about. Tucker and Rubina has become more and more obvious. And that is not only a threat strategically, but it also eliminates the emotional component, I think, for some of the people that would have liked for Tucker to stay.
Mhm.
For instance, somebody like Chemo, who I think really would have loved to vote to keep Tucker around. They had that big long hug the other day. But when he sees Tucker has essentially like locked himself off with Rubina, I don't think the motivation is the same. Same thing with Leah, who may have had an interest in like keeping Tucker around, but when Tucker is again with Rubina, that element has gone because it's not only the emotional component, but it ties into the strategic component. If they're going to be a showmance, that's a threat, and so I think that's a part of it. And then even people who don't have any emotional attachment, like Brooklyn and Chelsea, they also see Tucker and Rubina. They also see that as a threat strategically. In addition to that, Kenny has continued to renew his efforts to leave the game. So Kenny's like, man, I've been having such a hard day, guys. Like, I don't know if I'm feeling it anymore. And the more Kenny talks about wanting to leave, the less of a threat he feels like he is, especially in contrast with Tucker, who's talking about how he's going to win every competition, who's playing the game hard, and now is potentially in a showmance with Rubina. And I think for players like Brooklyn and Chelsea, their strong desire to take out Kenny has dissipated because of that. And they're much more willing to, they're not as willing to fight Cedric on what he would want because it would have had to have been a fight given that Cedric obviously would want Tucker out. And so all of this to say, we get to this conversation and pretty much what they're saying is, well, if Tucker really wants or Cedric really wants Tucker out, let's just do that.
hmm We could get into, we could be here for the rest of the day talking about all of the different motivations as to why people wanted to originally keep Tucker and why, a lot of that has shifted within, all of, again, these individual mindsets. For, specifically like a Chemo, somebody who you think like you can look at Tucker and say, I obviously feel this type of way, and he was giving me a hug and trying to comfort me, and he should be somebody that is never going to put me up and target me. But at a certain point, it does feel like Chemo has been distracted so much by everything going on there that just eliminating that from the game would be truly his best bet at this point. He's got T-Core that is heavily pushing for Tucker to go at a certain point because she's so annoyed by everything he does and says, which you can understand. I mean, the charm isn't going to work on 100% of people by any means. And the way that Tucker talks to, he was talking to Cedric and whatnot, while he wasn't going out of his way to be like, we've heard so much worse in a Big Brother house. It didn't sit with her right. And, she's totally valid in feeling that way. So between her feeling like that and Chemo feeling like, maybe this is just easier, especially now that he's with Rubina, you already lost that group. You lost Leah again, as you mentioned, with the Tucker and Rubina really locking things in between the two of them. She's like, well, what am I supposed to do with Tucker now? Like, are we going to still work together? I don't really want to talk to either one of those two at this point. The momentum has totally shifted. If it was ever, I mean, it was definitely there in the first place to evict Kenny
We were
because
so
he
close.
we were so close. The amount of times that he's told people that he's ready to go, and him arguing with Brooklyn and him talking about the Girls Alliance and all of this stuff, like people were definitely ready to be like, you know what, just get this guy out of here. But Tucker has just like actively dug himself a hole so badly that he's making it impossible for anybody to make any other choice. Like the night before your possible eviction, granted, anybody out there that's confused on what Tucker's strategy is, he is not making pitches to maybe one or two, but he's not going around actively campaigning for himself. He stayed on the block on purpose. He wants to win the AI arena against possibly Quinn. Originally Quinn, and now probably definitely Quinn. He wants to win the AI arena and make sure that he takes himself off the block that way. So he's not worried about anything else in the house. He's not worried about his relationships with other people. He's not worried about the perception of him and Rubina floating around the house after what is going to go on the rest of the night. He doesn't care. That's not what he's here for. He's here to compete. And if it goes wrong, he goes home. Oh, well, that has been his thought process throughout the entire week. And again, when this all goes crashing down tonight and he goes home, we will have nobody to blame but Tucker himself. And that's that.
Yes, but he's very confident. He's going to win the AI Arena competition, and I would say if it's something physical, he's got a great shot. But Kenny is like not a slouch physically.
And Kenny's
Uh,
gonna try. He's gonna try to
And that's
win.
the problem is that he's saying like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna," but he's gonna. Every time he competes in a competition, it recharges him like he's Ainsley by 10%.
Yeah.
And then given that we're likely going to see Quinn in the competition as well, I guess we'll get a chance to see what Quinn is capable of physically if it's a physical competition. He's always hyping himself up about being a physical competitor, but quite frankly, when I watched him in that upgrade competition, I was not super impressed.
Sorry, Tucker had a conversation with I don't remember who yesterday. He was talking about him working out with Quinn in the backyard and how they were both running in the backyard, doing laps around the backyard, and he let Quinn pass him at one point because he noticed that Quinn was trying to pass him, and it gave him like a boost, like gave Quinn a boost. Like I think he even commented on it. He's like, "Passed you," and Tucker's like, "Yeah, you did. Like you got me there." And he's like, "But then I went on to like do all of these other workouts. I was doing laps in the pool, so like I don't know. Let the guy feel that this type of way. Let him be all hyped up going into Thursday night."
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. The collective, the group up there, at least they talk about also that Cedric is, or sorry, that Quinn is likely to go up at this point, and that some of the people on the other side of the house who are not in their alliance may want him out if he does go up there, but they can't let that happen, obviously. Cedric also checks in with them. They let him know we're down to vote out Tucker. They're like, hey, and listen, if we vote out Tucker, there's a good chance Kenny just walks out right behind him. Two
No,
for
he won't.
one.
He literally will. I mean, I understand the excitement of that thought process. Like, it would be amazing for them if they could just get rid of two people in one night. It's not going to happen. Kenny and the thumbs up, thumbs down of it all. I mean, the editors had a slam dunk as far as, figuring that aspect of the episodes go, because as long as Kenny is in the house, you are going to see those thumbs on the screen.
Because the problem is, listen, I think here's my theory, and it let me be clear, it's a joke theory, but here's my theory. My theory is that the AI arena is what's keeping Kenny in the game. Because, like I said, every time he competes in a competition, he's reinvigorated for a
Mm-hmm.
brief period of time. And so every time he would just follow Matt or Tucker out the door, he's just competed in something. And so he's not feeling it at that moment. And so that's the problem. We need no competition on Thursday in order for Kenny to leave.
Yeah. Look,
Uh,
well, obviously we're probably about 1 week away from that happening. In a world where looking past the next evictions, I don't know who goes home next after Tucker likely goes home this week. Does he not win the AI comp? You see a world where Angela and Kenny are still in the house going into week 5. Like it's going to be so interesting. You talk about a world where like Leah and MJ are these two that are like on the outs and just kind of like waiting to be picked up. No one's going after Kenny and Angela if they make it that far. So they are also going to be pieces that need to be picked up at some point.
I do think Kenny will continue to be halfway targeted because I think that because he's so hot and cold, every time he decides he wants to stay, people want him to leave. And then he decides he wants to go, and they're like, maybe we can keep him around a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But he will continue to want to stay and make and like say things about like, oh well, now I think these people are working together, and then those people want him out. But then he'll be like, actually, now that they want me out again, I want to leave. And people will be like, okay, we actually don't really care because he wants to leave. And then he'll be like, oh, nobody wants me out again. I guess I'll stay. And then people will tell me that this is all a strategy by Kenny, and I'll be like,
And who's his next like Matt Tucker when Tucker's gone? Is he gonna, go all in with Cedric, who he's bonded with in some capacity? Is he gonna find Cam, the next, alpha male archetype that he can find?
I mean, yeah, there's only two left at this point. He'll have to go Cedric or Cam. And then if he loses them, maybe he goes back to Quinn at that point. I don't
I don't
know.
know. Or the Angela and Kenny of it all just takes another step, another level up in the house, and who knows? Uh,
Okay, so Quinn and Joseph have a little conversation about being fans. Again, they bring up that Quinn it was talking about he was like, "Oh, it took you too long to talk about like which season Shima was on." He's like, "I was faking that. I know it's season 11." But then they were like, "Yeah, because she threw the mic in the water because she was upset that Jesse left, right?" And then they're like, but somebody was more upset. It was who? Michelle? Like, yeah, maybe in season 10. But no, they were not talking about Michelle. But then they're like, "Oh man, Jesse was doing well that season." And Quinn has the gall to say, "What a broken ass thing that took him out. That coup d'etat power." And Joseph is like, "Well, it's helped you out."
oh, got him.
Uh After Joseph leaves, Quinn is like, "Thank you guys," to the cameras. He's saying, "Thank you guys for putting somebody in here that I can talk to about the show who knows the lore. But I'm still gonna make sure I stay longer than him so that my deep dive is better than his deep dive." And I listen, I'm just like, "Dude, what do you guys want from me? Like you're trying to suck me to two long deep dives? Excuse me? Like these things are taxing, all right? Don't be assuming. Don't be assuming you get one. That's not how this works.
Can't they just come on a recap or something? Like the recaps are supposed to not the recaps. The deep dives are supposed to be earned. But like I can imagine, like, and I'm not speaking for you by any means, but I can imagine at a certain point right now, it almost feels like it's an obligation that is going to have to come because both of these two have talked about it so much, particularly Quinn. Like, are we supposed to earn the deep dive? I mean, look, if you end up going out in the next week or two, your deep dive is going to be a lot shorter than you're hoping for it to be. So then it's still going to just be awkward when you get out here and it's like everyone's talking about, so Quinn, like, when are you, people are going to be tagging you? So Taran, when's the Quinn deep dive? And it's like, oh, we only have 5 weeks of content to talk about. That can be a 20-minute podcast. But
We'll just stick them in like an arena and have them fight over it, and then maybe one of them gets one. But both, I don't know about this.
yeah,
That's
look,
yeah,
I'm sure
I'm
that they will
tired
both.
after season ends. I wanna I would like listen. I'm gonna be busy, quite frankly. I've got things to do. I've got plans in October.
I don't want to speak for Puya, but I think that there's a world where we see them both in a Goose Goose Duck lobby at some point or another. So there will be opportunities for them to get their time with Taran or whoever they want to get their time with. But enough of making us hear about it on the live feeds.
All right. So, uh, big news for the Tubina stands that last night. Man, I've never said that out loud actually. Tubina. I
Tubina or not Tubina?
when I read it, I think more like tubes, like
Mhm.
tubina. But when I say it, it does sound like tubina, like tubina or not tubina.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. Um, there's some tension here, and not bad tension, if you know what I'm saying. If I had clipped Rob's saxophone soundbite
Oh
yet, I
yeah.
would be playing it. I haven't had a chance to yet, but I don't worry, I plan to. But what we could play is which where's this one? Let's be real, this one's better than the newcomers because this one is a play on the HOH theme.
Oh,
But
and there's noises in the background that I don't
it
like.
does have the noises in the background, and I also feel bad for Taylor every time I play it now. So,
Uh,
uh,
yeah. Tubina is real. Tubina or not Tubina, they decided Tubina last night, and not as much as previous players have Tubina in the house, but they have decided that they are going to. And when the night started off, they were, on a scale of 1 to 10 at, like, I don't know, like a 3 to be nang, just kind of some light cuddles, kind of like, a lot closer in body language and in cuddles than they had been willing to go previously. Obviously, the tension has been there between the two of them. Rubina in particular, I'm going to start calling her Tumina. Rubina in particular, I feel like will go up to Tucker quite often and be like, so, like, um, I'm still trusting you in this game. Just like a lot of things to just kind of keep herself in the room with him because Tucker is the wild card here of a human being. You have to, like, I don't want to say tie him down because the conversation that we're having, but oh, hi Taylor. You have to like tie Tucker down in a room to get him to have his attention for more than 5 minutes. And Rubina certainly does get his attention, and with some various pop-ins, or most people kind of avoiding the room at a certain point, things get, play the music again if you want. Well, actually, no, don't, because Taylor's here. But yeah, quite the night. Oh no.
Yes. There's I don't know. I don't know what prompted this. If it's like they know it might be the last night or what, but yes, definitely some almosts there with Tucker and Rubina. If Tucker is to stay, I don't know if the almost is gonna last
Oh
very
no,
long.
no. And for anyone who didn't watch, this still is on YouTube. I don't think we need to get into the details of how everything played out, but you can kind of, put it together, or just go on Twitter for some clips. A lot of this took place on whose bed? Whose bed, Taryn, in the house? Chemo.
I mean, listen, it's it's just so disrespectful. It's so it's so wild to me, like, because there are so many unrequited crushes where it's like, if you can say, okay, so Chelsea was maybe going to be into Cam, but then Cam was into Leah, but Leah's not into Cam because Leah's into Tucker. There's a whole chain there, but then you also have Quinn was into Leah, maybe. And like we're gonna talk about Joseph and Leah a little bit. We're gonna talk about like again Cam into Leah. Um and so there's a bunch of that stuff, but then Leah's only into Tucker. And but then all of that comes into this idea that like, oh well, everyone's going into Tucker and Tucker's going into Rubina, which is funny, except for the fact that there's another link there, which is that apparently Tucker was first into T-Core, but T-Core wasn't into Tucker. And so there's still like there's just so like how like listen, I feel like casting is usually like they pair people up. But somehow, some way this year, maybe they did this on purpose. Love Island's been getting some good ratings.
Yeah. We
Maybe that's
are
what they were going to.
we are like a season away from the Big Brother house just having soul ties in the house. I know that doesn't mean anything to you, but it's something that is going to happen. You're going to see a giant neon sign over one of the beds next year that just says soul ties. And as far as these two are concerned, Tucker, again, you have a very real possibility of going out tomorrow. Word is spreading through the house that something may be going on even further. Not like I don't think anyone's suspecting them of like Jared and Blue here, but it's very noticeable. The Rubina of it all is also interesting because when you think back, and like, look, I'm not gonna hold it against her for pursuing Tucker when this is a realistic thing for her, and also look at Tucker. But like it's the conversations that Rubina was having with Chemo a week or so ago, when Chemo was really kind of being aware of like in a real way of the crush that he had, and Rubina was like comforting Chemo and being like, I get it, like you shouldn't feel bad for feeling that way. And again, just for all of this to end up like the first kiss happened on Chemo's bed.
Yeah,
Unreal.
and T-Core and Chemo have a conversation. And they're again saying, we don't like the Tubina showmance. It's not good for our game. They say, you know what? They had the collective meeting. They're down. They're down to vote Tucker out over Kenny. Chemo says, it breaks my heart, but it is better. It's a better game move. I've got to vote out Tucker. And I can't help but think that maybe if Tucker had been given another hug or something, I don't know. But there it is. They do want to vote out Tucker. Now there is one other crush I didn't mention, which was that Joseph actually mentioned. I don't know how serious he was about this, but he said that he actually had a bit of a crush on Chelsea at first. And I don't know, like again, like I don't know what is going on here. Where it's like, oh, everyone's gonna have a crush. But it is very funny when I talk about like the chain of crushes, because Joseph is gonna have a long conversation with Leah, and they're bonding over how they don't like Rubina. Um, and they're trash talking some people, and they're laughing and joking and touching, and he lets her know that everyone's voting out Tucker if he stays on the block. And he actually mentioned this in the collective meeting. He was like, "Hey, we will be like, we can tell certain people certain things, like if we're close to them, maybe I can talk to Leah." And so he's having this conversation. He lets Leah know Tucker's the vote. Um, but this does not go unnoticed that they're hanging out together. Immediately, it's like one long conversation, but immediately Cam is like, "Oh, oh, Leah and Joseph are spending a lot of time together, huh?" And he's like, "I mean, Leah did say that she likes people with some pudge, and Joseph has some pudge, so Leah might like that." And it's like, whoa.
Way too far. And Chemo, like, very
Yeah.
thankfully is right there to step in and be like, okay, you didn't have to say that. You definitely didn't have to say that. Cam, not everybody can have the build that you have. So back off. But yeah, it's spread, and the jealousy that's exuding from a lot of people in the house based on it's maybe not necessarily like full on jealousy, but it's causing feelings from a lot of people in the house, from the people that they may have had eyes on at one point or another, that are even just having a conversation and laughing, like Joseph and Leah, they're giggling away in the room, about game, about this, about that, and it's just causing Cam to walk off and say things like that. And I don't know, it's just you know Love Island, it does come with good and it comes with bad. By the way, before we get too far away from the Love Island of it all, Angela and her crush, speaking of the person that we're talking about right now, Angela did admit that her one crush in the house, that if she was 25 years younger, despite all of Chelsea's comments about this person not being the cleanest, Angela, 25 years ago, would have been into Cam.
There you go.
There's
I
that.
do I do like the connection though, if we say Joseph crushing on Chelsea, crushing on Cam, crushing on Leah, crushing on Tucker, crushing on T-Core. But you can say there's even a circle though if you go Joseph into Chelsea, into Cam, into
Well, I don't like
Leah,
the word
into
into
Joseph
here.
again.
I don't like that word. Different show.
Yeah, listen, we all watched The Boys season 4.
Oh yeah.
Uh okay, so uh MJ talks to Chelsea about how she's not feeling great about Leah. She feels like she's been distancing herself from her. Again, there's just some separation here between the two of them. They've never, I think, fully trusted each other. And they're not even quite on the same page right now. So, so there's a little bit of that going on. But MJ's pretty active here in the night. She's going to talk to Tucker as well about like the alliance that they've talked about potentially starting. MJ's like, Chelsea's definitely with us. And but Tucker's like, I don't want to lock anything in until after the eviction. Like, I don't know if I'm down for that. But then MJ continues to just go on and do more campaigning for Tucker than Tucker has campaigned for him. In fact, since Tucker is often really like anti-campaigning for himself, this is like way more than Tucker has ever done. But she's going to start pitching that Kenny should be leaving over Tucker, and she pitches to a group of like Joseph, Quinn, and T-Core, who none of whom are going to care what she has to say. And Quinn is even kind of appalled that she even had that she even like tried with him. He's like, "You're gonna ask me like who I want to leave?" The guy is like, I forget what he said. It's like he was shaking, like calling me out in front of the entire house. You think I'm gonna not vote him out?
Oh, I thought it
Yeah.
was a sound drop. You moved forward to your sound drop spot. Yeah. And again, going back to the MJ of it all, MJ is doing her best to kind of get in on what's happening because she has been so left out. So keeping an eye on her going forward will be something that I'm doing. Tucker, as far as all of this is concerned, it's so interesting, the conversation MJ and Tucker had, because this is how Tucker's been talking to everybody in the house of like, well, next week, you know what I'm going to do next week? I'm going to do this next week. And next week when I get HOH and I get HOH. And if I talk to Quinn next week, I'll talk to Quinn and I'll do whatever Quinn says, and we'll use Quinn's nominations if he wants, and that way he doesn't have to use the power. Tucker, you may not be here next week. You have to win this competition or you are going home. But that's fine. Yeah, it should be obvious to everybody, and that's why it was obvious to everybody by the end of the day today that if Tucker was on the block, he should be the one that gets evicted. It just makes the most sense. You know, the rest of the week they were talking about, because I think most of them would have liked for a reason to be presented to them why Kenny really should be the one to go home over Tucker. Tucker still is this charismatic guy. People like to have him around in some capacity when he's not targeting them. People like to look at him. People like to have him around. But as far as the game is concerned, when you're at the night before the eviction, it's just clicking for everybody with a brain in there that this guy has to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apparently the AI summary is going wild.
Oh no.
Others are speculating if Angela and Cam will get together.
Oh.
Um,
Oh, and I stand corrected, by the way, in the chat before, that apparently Tucker and Rubina did not share a kiss on the mouth.
no,
It was just
neck
neck
kisses.
kisses, and
He
I
said
stand
no to
corrected
the
on that.
mouth.
Okay, you may or may not believe it, but when I was catching up this morning on the clips, didn't watch the full clips to see exactly what happened there. So it
I
wasn't.
did.
Oh, good for you. And you don't watch Love Island? Why?
Listen, I have to. People are gonna call me out if I say they kissed on the lips and they didn't.
Somebody walks, but like if Taran worked in an office, somebody walks past his desk and they're like, "What are you watching there?" Oh, it's work. I promise.
It was listen, the vibe was very nuzzly. Like they came close a few times, but it's they were holding back.
Yep.
All right. So finally kind of the MJ is going to talk with Leah and Chelsea. Chelsea basically says, like, I'm fine with Tucker leaving. Or, sorry, Leah says, I'm fine with Tucker leaving. Chelsea agrees. They're like, yeah, it's fine if Tucker leaves. But MJ is like, I mean, I guess so. Like, I'd be fine with it too. But I just want to know ahead of time. I just want to know who is going to leave. I'll go with the house, but obviously she prefers for Tucker to stay. They also talk about the possibility of Quinn going up, and MJ pushes again, like we should vote him out. But Chelsea kind of disagrees. She's kind of like, I feel like we should be careful about that, MJ, because if Quinn stays, he's going to be the HOH and he will likely target anybody that tried to get him out. So be careful, MJ, about this Quinn stuff. And this is obviously Chelsea's, I would say, fairly subtle in the sense that MJ certainly I don't think is clocking it, but like way of protecting Quinn in the event that Quinn is on the block against, say, Tucker with MJ and Leah.
Yeah. I mean, look, Quinn is going to have two easy nominations if Tucker is the one that goes, as far as just getting Kenny and Angela back up there. And it, whether MJ votes that way or not, feels like she's a very likely candidate to just be that third spot. So don't give Quinn any more reason to have that be the case. But yeah, I mean, you have, as we talked about at the beginning of this, Chelsea and Brooklyn that are just kind of doing what they can with these extra pieces in MJ and Leah. And when those pieces start to kind of like run off on their own and try to make their own decisions in the house, you kind of got to whack them down a little bit as Chelsea and Brooklyn and be like, no, back it up. I'll tell you what to do.
Yeah. So, okay. Predicting tonight. If Tucker and Kenny are on the block together. So I'm let's just assume that Quinn goes up on the block. If Quinn wins the AI arena competition, Tucker and Kenny are on the block. Tucker is the person who is going to be voted out tonight.
Yes.
If Tucker wins the AI arena competition and it's Quinn and Kenny on the block, Kenny is the one that is very likely to be voted out over Quinn. If Kenny wins the AI arena competition and it's Tucker versus Quinn on the block, that is the closest vote, probably. But it is more heavily leaning toward Quinn staying now
Mhm.
than even before. And that's because Chemo and T-Core are both seemingly locked in now on Quinn's side. Even Leah is not quite a guarantee for Tucker anymore, and may vote to keep Quinn. Even MJ may or may not go ahead with that vote because she won't want to be on the wrong side of the numbers. And so, what I assume will happen if it's Quinn versus Tucker is that MJ will go to Chelsea and be like, listen, we should do this. We can get Leah, we can get Angela, we can get Kenny. We can like maybe get these votes together. Rubina, like if we can, like, I feel like she will try to put something together. But the problem is, I think she's going to go to Chelsea as her point person. And Chelsea will probably shut it down. And this is
Yes.
why I say if somehow Quinn does get evicted over Tucker, I think it's because of chaos happening. And so if Chelsea's not able to shut it down because it doesn't come to Chelsea because Mackenzie's busy talking to other people instead, and like it just gets all messy, and then for some reason a group of Angela, Kenny, Rubina, Leah, Mackenzie, they need one more. It could be a stray chemo. It could be, that's probably the most likely one at this point. Like maybe just like a sympathy vote or just like a change of heart at the last minute. Maybe Tucker goes to chemo and gives him a hug and is like, please keep me. Like, that's where I feel like there's still maybe a chance, but it is not looking great at this point for Tucker if he is on the block tonight.
Yeah, and even the the Quinn and Kenny being on the block together at the end of the night could be interesting just in the sense that you're going to have Tucker freed up off the block to go march around the house, and he's not going to be quiet about it. He's going to go back in there and be like, everybody, we need to evict Quinn. This is our time. He's got the power. He will not be afraid to do that. We've seen him shake up the house in a variety of ways, especially this week. And the whole thing that he wanted out of this week was for Quinn to go. And if he is riding the adrenaline of just winning the AI comp and it's Quinn versus Kenny on the block, Tucker is going to do everything imaginable to make sure that there are at least, and you can see a world where he can round up 4 to 5 votes that would be there for Quinn to go. And then, like you said, we're kind of back in the same scenario of just maybe needing that last chemo vote to go that way. And there could be anybody beyond just chemo that could place that vote being like, in the same way that this seems like a slam dunk that Tucker has to go home over Kenny, that Quinn should be the obvious pick to go home over Kenny, just because we know how strong of a player he is. Somebody could make that very last minute decision to make a selfish move for their own game and say that he should go. So while it feels pretty locked in as how the momentum has, shifted us throughout this week, or at least the last 24 hours, there are still possibilities. And we haven't even talked about the possibility, I know it's unlikely, of if it's not Quinn. I mean, if it's not Quinn that's on the block, whoever that person that gets voted up there is totally safe. I mean, Quinn is the one most likely to go up, but also the most likely to go home if he is up there rather than anybody else.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So that's basically where things are at. It would require, as you're saying, a last minute kind of like shift, which is definitely possible because there are, like, they can plan for Quinn to go up on the block all they want, but once it actually happens, that could change. That could start seeing things differently. Seeing him sit in that chair may make them feel differently about how they were planning to vote before. Tucker actually campaigning instead of not campaigning at all could make them change their minds. So there are definitely ways where this could go in a different direction. But as of right now, the most likely result is Tucker if he's on the block, and Kenny if Tucker is not on the block. But do not discount the possibility that things could go very poorly for Quinn tonight. So that's, I think, about what we have here. Matt, anything else that you would like to bring up from yesterday?
Not really. Just, I guess my closing thoughts on Tucker, if this is his last day in the house. One thing that I've taken, some solace in is knowing that he will be back in some capacity, whether it's on Big Brother, whether he gets a challenge call, whether it's
Yeah,
on
he
any
needs
other
to go on
show.
the challenge.
This man is made for television. Scally and I did a draft in the offseason of the challenge. We were talking about Big Brother players that should make the jump to the challenge. And this is in the preseason of the season. And I had Tucker as my last player on my team before even seeing him in the house. Just his personality that popped in the preseason. I was like, this man, I want to see him on the challenge. And 3 weeks in, that has not changed whatsoever. So I feel like he's a lock. We don't see a lot of pre-jury people show back up on Big Brother, but it certainly has happened before. I mean, you talk like your BB17 had, like, of course, Davon, Jason, who ends up back on a different version of Big Brother. But when you're such a big personality, and like, look at the edit from last night. The production team is here for Tucker, and in some capacity, like, I almost feel like Tucker's the kind of player that could convince them that next season needs to have 4 returning players again, just so that they can bring back Tucker and they'll find 3 other worthy returnees just to have him back in the house, and hopefully he lasts a little bit longer than 3 weeks this time. In the scenario where Tucker does stay tonight, going out next week, unless he wins the comps again, he is now, completely risen to the top target spot in the house that Angela was putting herself in, from the first couple of weeks. And now it's firmly Tucker. Now it's just, if anybody wants to try to have an easy week where it's like, first of all, Tucker's going to volunteer again for the next HOH and the next HOH to have an easy nomination. But he's just going to end up, back in this spot until his eviction. So I don't know, if you want to rip off the Band-Aid, he'll go home tonight. If it's going to be next week, the week after, it's happening sooner or later. But otherwise, still plenty of again, interesting things that could take place in this house with so many moving pieces. So that's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is what we have for you today. Thank you all for joining us. Of course, I'll be back later tonight with the recap of tonight's eviction episode. I'll also be live on Twitch watching it happen. Plenty of events that we cannot predict entirely because of the AI arena, and I'm predicting the America's nomination, but the AI arena, and then who knows what happens with the vote. So come and hang out live on Twitch as we react to it in real time, and then come back here on RHAP for the recap. And I'll be back, of course, tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern to update, or sorry, tomorrow morning at noon Eastern to update on everything that happens today and tonight on the Big Brother 26 live feeds. Noon Eastern, because we will also be talking to one of Tucker, Kenny, or Quinn. And if it's Quinn, it'll be a 10-minute deep dive. So stay tuned for all of that. We'll of course have the BB Q&A tomorrow as well for the patrons, and we covered the getaway finale. Very fun finale, the big reveal, very Joe Schmo-esque kind of reveal. And we also spoke to the final 3 players there. It was very fun, little mini reunion that we had that should be coming out soon. We released the book club for House of the Dragon recently, the scripted coverage we've got going on. And we've got more coming there as well. And check out the Tastemakers for our scripted coverage of things. Matt, what do you have going on?
Well, speaking of the challenge, as we were about 5 minutes ago, the season 40 premiere the real premiere is next week, but the kickoff special was actually last night. So this afternoon, Brian Scally and I are getting together, and we are going to talk about it all. And then just going forward into months and months of the challenge 40 to come, featuring some Big Brother alumni. If you have never checked in on the challenge before, consider this a great time to jump in. I know it's a monumental season. You may not know all the history, but even in this launch special that aired last night, a lot of history was explained, and they will continue to do that. So if you want some Kyland and Josh and Casey, and check out the challenge over on the Free Agents podcast. We'll be covering that all season long. I was on Nothing But Netflix this past week with Robin Chappelle. We talked about Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie, which I know Taran has watched 6 times already, but he'll check out the recap as well. It was a lot of fun to talk some SpongeBob over on RHAP. And then, of course, the Diary Room. Everybody should check that out. We had the great Sharon Tharp on as our guest this past Tuesday, and then we're doing a bonus episode this week that'll be out tomorrow with the great Mike Bloom. So BB Press Week is happening over on the Diary Room. We've got some more fun guests lined up, and that's that. So I'm on Twitter at Matt Liguori, and that's my story. That's my deal.
All right. Well, thank you all once again for joining us here today, and I will see all of you next time.